From the studios in San Diego, California, this is Frank Fired Up here on the Mixed Up Sports Network, coming to you live here on this Wednesday, the 5th day of April 2017, as we get set to go. A busy day today between the Yankees coming away with a 5-0 win yesterday, the Mets playing tonight, the Yankees closing out their series against Tampa tonight, and the Masters coming up as well. Also, this ridiculous following of Russell Westbrook that we have in the NBA. The Knicks actually won a game. The Nets put up 141 last night. But we'll begin today with what was the flavor of the day yesterday after I missed with a family obligation. We'll start off with what was the flavor of the day yesterday, which is the NCAA tournament. And I know from listening to a lot of the radio shows yesterday, from listening to Boomer and Carton, from listening to Joe and Evan, Francesa, the Dan Lebitard show, The Herd with Colin Coward, and just a lot of the panel shows on ESPN and on Fox Sports, that I know for a fact that I am in the minority in this case. I thought Monday's NCAA finals game was actually pretty good. And I'll tell you why. When you have the coaches who are, especially when it comes to college, who are the most fickle people you could possibly imagine when it comes to officiating and reffing these games, when they're going out there and they're saying, well, I mean, Roy Williams called these guys the best officials in any league, high school, college, professional, doesn't matter. Did that game ever have a flow to it? No. Does that ruin the game? It ruins the viewing pleasure of it. But in my eyes, did that ruin the game? No. They called every foul, which, I mean, if you look at it, there's a reason why there were so many fouls in that game. 44 fouls were called. It's an average of over a foul a minute. There's a reason why a lot of those fouls were called, and that is because Gonzaga has count them, one, two, three, 7-footers on that team that can play. UNC had one. A lot of teams in this tournament have had one. And I understand that the officials in this tournament were very, very whistle happy. I understand that they were calling phantom plays, that they were missing obvious calls. And the call that everybody points to in this game obviously is the jump ball late with UNC up one. That missed call, did that missed call change the game? Yes, it did. Because instead of it being Gonzaga's ball down one on that end of the floor, now you give it to UNC, who then makes a shot down on the other end. They go up three, and now it's a completely different game. The guy's hand was on the line, yes. Does it look like he has possession? No. It doesn't look like he has possession. It looks like it's sitting between his legs. But he touches it while he's out of bounds. That, and by rule, he cannot be the first person to touch it because he went out of bounds. So that was the wrong call on all, no matter which way you look at it. That was the wrong call. Whether he meant to touch it or not, whether it was in his possession or not, it doesn't matter. His hand went out of bounds, and he cannot be the first player for UNC to touch it because he went out of bounds. So that is Gonzaga's ball. But when you're playing against 3 7-footers that can play, that are very, very good, you have to foul. Gonzaga had high foul totals all tournament. This wasn't just a one-off game where the referees decided to be picky. They were in foul trouble. They were getting fouls called on them all tournament. That's nothing new for Gonzaga. When you have big men who can play, when you have guys who are out, who are taller than people by 5, 6, 7 inches, you have to play them physical. There is going to be beating and banging. There's going to be hands getting smacked. There's going to be pushes. There's going to be tough defense. That's the nature of the game when you're in that particular spot. You have to look at it from both angles here. You call too many fouls like they did, you're reaming them for not letting the game flow. But when when you let them play, and you're seeing obvious foul after obvious foul after obvious foul getting missed, then you ream them for not opening their eyes and not calling fouls. You can't have it both ways. It's one or the other. You got to try to find a happy medium. Well, when there's fouls on every end of the floor all game long, well, you know what? You can't find a happy medium in that spot. You want these officials to be perfect. You want these officials to see everything. You want them to respond to everything. You want them to react to everything. But when they do, you complain, oh, they're not letting the game. They're not letting the game get into a flow. They're making it about them. They're not letting the game play out. And what makes it worse is the fact that these officials that called 44 fouls over the course of that game let the biggest play of the game go. And that is what makes it worse for them. You call all these fouls, but the one obvious play you let slip. And I think that's where a lot of people really start to ream these officials. Does that take away from the excitement of the game? From a viewer standpoint, yeah, it makes the game very tedious. Does it take away from the fact that that was a good game? No. Does it take away from the fact that that was a close game? No. It makes it hard to watch. Because these officials are calling everything. It doesn't make for good television because of all the stoppages. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it was a good game. Because then you have the aspect of, okay, who is really going to get into foul trouble now? Who's going to manage their fouls? When you have a team in the double bonus with 11 minutes to go, I agree. You're calling way too many fouls. Way too many fouls. There is no reason why a team should be in the double bonus with more than half of the half left. There's no reason for that. There's no excuse for that. Should the NCAA go to 6 fouls? You know, yes. I mean, you're trying to get these guys ready for the NBA. So why don't you play with the same set of rules as the NBA? It's the same thing with college. It's the same thing with college football. I don't get it. You're trying to get them ready for the parent league or the above league, but you have different rules. 4 12-minute quarters, 2 20-minute halves. 24-second shot clock, 35-second shot clock. 5 fouls, 6 fouls. 1 and 1, nothing. College football, only 1 foot has to be in bounds in order for it to be a catch. NFL, you need 2. Overtime in the NFL, you play it like a regular quarter. College, you start at the 25, and whoever doesn't score is whoever the first one to not score loses. And these are not little rules. These are big rules. These are way different to the game rules. Make the rules the same. You're trying to prepare them for the next league, so make their preparation more like the actual thing. You could do that. So the 6 fouls in college, I don't see a problem with that. And listen, when they're calling fouls, they don't care about you. Let's be honest here. When the officials are calling fouls, when they're going over to the monitor, when they have a team in the double bonus with 11 minutes left in the second half, they're not going over to the monitor saying, "All right, we got to lighten up on these foul calls because the fans are going to start getting annoyed by us here." They don't care about that. They're doing their job. They don't care about what you think of the game while they're in the game. They don't care, nor should they. This was a game that I'm sure a lot of people will say were ruined by the foul calls. Does it make for a bad viewing experience? Yes. Does it take away from the fact that the game was good? No, it doesn't. It was a good game that was hard to watch. That's what that was. That's what the national title game was on Monday night. It was a good game that was hard to watch. Be back with the Mets and Yankees when we return. You're listening to Frank Fired Up here on the Mixed Up Sports Network. All right, we're back. You're listening to Frank Fired Up here on Mixed Up Sports Network. Starting next week, what we're going to do is we're going to start cutting the show down to a half hour. If we do go a little over, that'll be fine. But we're also going to be eliminating the little breaks in between. So these shows will become a half hour going straight through one of the several changes that we do plan to initiate into the network. So so again, that's starting next week. We are going to be running 30 minutes straight through, no breaks. But that again, that'll take place on Monday. So we'll enjoy our last week of that. As we get to the Yankees and the Rays from last night, now the biggest concern coming out of this game is not Sabathia, who actually pitched pretty well. As I said, he would be pitching mostly off of memory, which he did yesterday. 5 innings, 3 hits, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts through 85 pitches, 55 of which were strikes. So not a bad outing for CC Sabathia. It's right around what I said to expect. Pitch like an 85, 90 pitch count or 6 innings or whatever you tend to see. The Padres didn't do that with Clayton Richard, who went 8 innings last night, allowing 5 hits in the Padre win over the Dodgers. But the biggest thing to take away from that game yesterday is maybe Gary Sanchez should not be hitting second. To me, I think Bird is fine where he is at third. I think Holiday is fine where he is at fourth. You can probably swap those guys up in the lineup, but Sanchez has to be hitting fifth. My thought is Sanchez has to be hitting fifth. He's not a number 2 hitter. He's not a speed guy. He's a power guy, and you reserve those 3, 4, 5 spots in the order for those power hitters. I think Ellsbury should be the 1 or the 2, and Gardner, whichever one you put Ellsbury in, Gardner gets the other one. But honestly, if you're insistent on putting Gardner as the leadoff hitter, I'd go Gardner, Ellsbury, Bird, Holiday, Sanchez. That would be my lineup. If you want to swap, I think Bird, Holiday, and Ellsbury and Sanchez are. You can move those guys around in the middle of that lineup. You don't have to have Sanchez batting 5. You don't have to have Bird batting 3. You don't have to have Holiday batting 4. They can hit in any of those spots, but to have Gary Sanchez now 0 for 10 on the season, only through 2 games, so you're not going to make a big gigantic deal of it. If he goes 0 for again tonight, then you got a problem. Then you got to start saying, okay, maybe he really isn't supposed to be hitting second. Because we're relying on this guy for power. This guy hit 20 home runs in 2 months last year, 2.5 months last year. Now, through the first 3 games, he's 0 for 14, 0 for 15, whatever he may be. Sanchez is not supposed to be in a number 2 role. Ellsbury is not a power hitter. I understand he went 2 for 4 yesterday. He scored a run. That's fantastic. Ellsbury is not a power hitter. He is a speed contact hitter. He should be in the 1 or the 2. Sanchez is the power hitter. He goes in the 3, 4, 5. Win or lose, if Sanchez goes 0 for again tonight, you have to move him out of second. You have to move him out of the number 2 spot in the lineup. You have to. Again, Sabathia goes 5 innings. The Yankees use 6 pitchers yesterday. Granted that Holder and Betances, they took Holder out for Betances after he gave up 2 hits. Betances comes in, shuts them down, walks to get the bases loaded, and then shuts Tampa Bay down in the eighth. And then Chapman comes in and does what he does in the ninth. Odorizzi, 6 innings, 7 hits, 4 runs, 4 strikeouts. He allowed the 2 home runs to Headley and Torreyes. Not the best of starts to open up the season. But you got to start somewhere. That and Tampa had several opportunities over the course of that game, and they could not cash in. They could not cash in on any of them. Which that for Tampa, I think last night was the big loser. I think that's where they lost last night. Especially when you have the bases loaded in the eighth inning after Betances comes in and walks the first guy, I believe the first guy he saw. That's a little bit of an issue. So tonight you have Pineda and Cobb going for the Yankees and the Rays respectively. Now, Pineda, this is a big, big year for Michael Pineda because he becomes a free agent at the end of this year. Last year, he did set career highs in innings pitched, starts, strikeouts, losses, and home runs allowed. So not easy, not good. And Alex Cobb, who's coming back off of Tommy John surgery, did have a couple starts last year. But he's coming back off of Tommy John surgery. This will be his first year. Expect him to be on an innings or a pitch count. I would say if he pitches, I think he would go probably to where CC Sabathia was last night. That would be my guess. Is that Cobb will go 5 innings or 85, 90 pitches, whichever one he hits first, before he's done. That, or unless he's just absolutely shutting the Yankee lineup down, then you take it from there. But this is a big year for Pineda. Free agency looming. He really is the number 2 starter that the Yankees have. Between Tanaka and Pineda, the Yankees don't have anyone else. So Pineda has to prove that he is that number 2. He has to prove that he is better than CC Sabathia because the Yankees right now are losing all of the top 3 guys in their rotation. The 3 guys you see pitch in this series against Tampa Bay are going to free agency at the end of this year. So this is a big year for all 3 of those guys. And this is a year where you're losing 3/5 of your starting rotation, a starting rotation of which you have 2 pitchers. And both of those 2 are going to free agency. Pineda has to have a big year. He's got to cut down the losses. This is a guy who is supposed to be an ace, who has not lived up to the hype. 12 losses last year. That's not good. 27 home runs allowed. That is really not good for Michael Pineda. Now you get to the Mets and Braves. Cologne versus DeGrom. DeGrom, who hasn't pitched, I think, what was it, since July, right around there? And Bartolo Colon, who is beginning his 20th Major League campaign. This is a game that, again, you would expect the Mets to win. These first couple innings, maybe the first turn through the lineup, is going to be very, very fun to watch. Because you have a bunch of you have a bunch of characters on that Met team. Reyes, Cabrera, Cespedes. a bunch of guys that are going to be very, very happy that they're going to be facing Bartolo Colon, and that Bartolo Colon is coming back. I think right around now at Citi Field, actually, they're showing a tribute video to Colon. Which, I mean, a tribute video for a guy who was only there 3 or 4 years seems a little misplaced. But when I mean, the guy became a folk hero. Is a lovable guy who you can laugh at very, very easily, whether it be with the bat or his personality. The behind the back flip in Miami, the home run in San Diego, which thank God I was there for, sitting with the Seven Line Army. So he made an impression in his 3 years here. And he was the only one of the pitching rotation that didn't get hurt. He was the only one in the last 3 years out of Syndergaard, now Syndergaard pitched through his issue with the bone spurs, but between DeGrom, Harvey, Matz, Wheeler, Cologne, he was the only one that stayed. He was the only one that didn't have an injury issue. He was the only one that made every start he needed to make. So he definitely will be a major figure in this game today. I don't think he won't. I mean, if there is one guy on that Atlanta Braves team that both sides will cheer for, it's Bartolo Colon. Going back to the Yankees, we got the lineups for tonight before we go to break. For the Yankees, it'll be Brett Gardner, Gary Sanchez, Greg Bird, Matt Holliday, the DH, Jacoby Ellsbury, Starlin Castro, Chase Headley, Aaron Judge, Ronald Torreyes with Michael Pineda on the mound. For Tampa Bay, you have Corey Dickerson, Kevin Kiermaier, Evan Longoria, Brad Miller, Steven Souza Jr., Logan Morrison, Tim Beckham, Malix Smith, and Derek Norris. The catcher with Alex Cobb on the mound tonight for the Rays. For the Atlanta Braves, Ender Inciarte, Dansby Swanson, Freddie Freeman, Matt Kemp, Nick Markakis, Brandon Phillips, Adonis Garcia. Kurt Suzuki replaces Tyler Flowers, who had a very, very bad opening day. With Bartolo Colon batting ninth. For the Mets, you're going with pretty much the same exact lineup as you had on opening day. Reyes, Cabrera, Cespedes, Granderson, Walker, Bruce, Duda, Darno gets the start tonight with Jacob deGrom on the mound. So that is what you're looking at with the New York Mets. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Frank Fired Up here on the Mixed Up Sports Network. All right, we're back. You're listening to Frank Fired Up here on the Mix Up Sports Network, getting ready to close out the show today. Going to the Masters, which begins tomorrow, the first major of the PGA Tour year 2017. It'll be at Augusta, Georgia, starting tomorrow. Raining and tornado-esque conditions today. The rest of the weekend should actually be pretty clear. So you're really not expecting weather to play a factor in the tournament this weekend. However, the big story coming out of Augusta right now is the injury that just happened, I want to say maybe an hour or so ago, which is the injury to Dustin Johnson, the number one player in the world, and the odds on favorite to win the Masters, who fell down a flight of steps at a home that he was renting in Augusta for the weekend. So, according to the article on ESPN.com, Dustin Johnson took a serious fall on a staircase Wednesday and injured his lower back, and his manager said it was uncertain whether or not the number one golfer would be able to play in the Masters. I'm sure he'll play. David Winkle, his manager at Hambrick Sports, said Johnson fell on the stairs at a home he was renting in Augusta, saying, quote, he landed very hard on his lower back and is now resting, although quite uncomfortably. He has been advised to remain immobile and begin a regimen of anti-inflammatory medication and icing with the hope of being able to play tomorrow. Now, being the number one in the world, he's set to tee off in the last group. There are three golfers teeing off at 2:03 p.m. It's Johnson, Bubba Watson, and Jimmy Walker. Those are the three that are teeing off last for the Masters. Johnson was an 11-2 favorite to win the Masters entering Wednesday. According to Westgate's Superbook, after the injury, his odds fell to 7-1, the same as both Jordan Spieth and Rory McIlroy. So a big injury possibly taking out Dustin Johnson, which would be an absolute hit to the Masters. It would be a huge blow to the tournament as a whole. I mean, when you lose the number one golfer in the world to an injury the day before the Masters, that is a huge hit. I don't care who you are. Your day, your tournament just took a massive blow with that injury. That, and honestly, his agent said initially, he said he should be able to play tomorrow. But if he should be able to play tomorrow, there's no reason this story comes out then. This will probably be a side note as he's teeing off or as he's in the first couple holes. You know, he fell down yesterday. He fell down at his home, and it's obviously all right because he's here to play. But no, apparently he really messed himself up, which is really not good, especially for the future. Especially for, again, as I said, 11-2 favorite, the odds-on favorite to win the Masters this year. To close out the show, we'll go through the scores from yesterday. The Brooklyn Nets defeating the Philadelphia 76ers 141-118. Nets nab their third straight win, and as I said, they're really starting to put themselves in a bad spot because you're now 19-59 on the season. You're only 3 games now ahead of the Phoenix Suns for first place and 3.5 ahead of the Lakers. The Nets are 6-4 in their last 10 games. The Suns are 0-10 in their last 10. I mean, if you're playing for the number one overall pick, this is not. If you're playing for the best chance at receiving the number one overall pick in the draft, this is not the way to do it. This is not by any means the way to do it. Knicks defeat the Bulls 100-91. The Yankees losing yesterday, beating the Rays yesterday 5-0. The Rangers play the Washington Capitals tonight. That game will be on the NBC Sports Network with Wednesday night rivalries. The Islanders, on a goal from Thomas Hickey, beat the Predators 2-1 yesterday to keep their playoff hopes alive. Devils beat the Flyers in overtime 1-0. And that is just about it. Also, the Derrick Rose issue. This is his fourth knee surgery that he'll be having. He will miss 3 to 6 weeks, which is kind of funny to say because Knicks aren't making the postseason, so it doesn't matter. But like I said, I believe I said it on Monday. Any stock, any free agency stock that he gained over the course of the season is now all but gone. The one thing he had to do this year was go through a season without any injuries, and what does he do? He gets hurt. It's unfortunate for him. It really, really is. But you gotta stay healthy if you want a contract, and he is not going to get a contract next year. If he does, it's going to be for a lot less than what it would have been if he didn't get hurt. So, I mean, you obviously don't plan on getting hurt. You obviously don't expect to get hurt, but things happen. And when those things happen, you got to deal with the results. And that'll do it for us today. I hope you enjoyed the program, and we will hope you enjoy the games tonight, starting in about 15 minutes. And I will see you guys tomorrow.